See, we are now streaming live on YouTube. If there is anyone joining us on this beautiful Wednesday morning for this stream, it is 8:33. We're just giving it a couple of minutes. Our agenda today is short, but it does involve actions that require us to have at least a majority of the subcommittee members. So I'm giving us just a couple more minutes to wait for some folks to log on. If I can get everybody, just hang on. I'm just going to send a quick note out to everybody to see if we can get some more folks on the line here and have a quorum. While I wait to see if we do get a couple more people, Ian and Andrew, I'm going to skip over you two since you're our lawyers and drafters here. Cindy, I'm going to open it to you and ask you if you had any questions or concerns or things you'd like to clarify about the definitions that were circulated.
No, I didn't actually. I read through everything, and honestly, it's pretty much as we discussed. So I'm fine with everything that you sent out,
Appreciate that.
and appreciate all of the work that went into that.
I do copying and pasting. I have smarter minds than me who have been our legal whizzes taking this group's conversations and memorializing it. So thank you to Andrew and Ian who worked over the holiday season to make sure we had drafts that aligned with everything this group talked about.
Yeah, very nice job.
I'm going to stick around for 2 more minutes and ask everybody to do the same. I hate to waste anybody's time since you're joining us on a holiday week video call to see if we can't get these definitions approved. While we wait to see anybody else, the other thing that I had circulated in the body of the email was what will be the framework of the report that we're submitting. As I think everybody knows, we're required to submit a December report. There were no specific requirements of that. So what we have done, and this is exactly as we shared during the last meeting, is take the topics this group has identified for exploration, as well as some of the other notes around things like using plain language, looking at other states and expanding stakeholder engagement. With the big note that this list is not intended to be limiting, did anybody have any questions or flags about that item that was circulated in the body of an email? I am seeing none. So that means we are at least catching everything that everybody is sharing. So that's good to hear. I am, yes, this is me being the new segment producer, dragging this out to see if I get somebody before we've got to go to another live shot. I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I'll give you all your time back. I apologize. We had gotten confirmations from all but 2 that folks could join, but I know life happens, and it's a sometimes hectic week for folks, or maybe a checked out week for some people. Andrew or Ian, just while we've got you and for my notes and putting things together, is there anything that you want to call out in what was circulated And Andrew, yours may be simpler because I think it's one word versus our last conversation. But I'll give the floor to you if there's anything you want to put on the record for this group, for those who may be watching the stream or catching the recording, or as I capture things in our report. Anything on the definition of disability that you want to call to our attention?
Uh, Good morning, and this is Andrew. No, with respect to the definition of disability, I did remove the one word that I had added, so we reverted back to literally copied and pasted from the ADA definition of disability itself. I will point out that in the most recent circulation, we had two definitions of qualified individual with a disability, definition 1 and definition 2. So just to kind of explain the difference there, the original as I circulated was definition 2, which takes Title 1, which is employment, their definition of qualified individual, and Title 2, which is public entities, that definition of qualified individual, and kind of combine them into one big definition for our purposes in CADA. Then if you look at what's now labeled definition 1, after looking at the other circulation, I believe from Ian, with qualified individual broken out a little bit more, a little differently, what I did is I copied Ian's proposed definition of qualified individual into what is now definition 1, replacing the original Title 1 of the ADA definition with Ian's proposal, because I think it frankly is just a little more plain language, spells it out a little bit more cleanly, and just hits the things that we're looking to hit. So at this point, my proposal would be to accept definition 1, which has the language directly from Title 2, that's the public entity language for qualified individual, and then Ian's proposed language for employment for that. With that, I think it's all otherwise fairly straightforward. Thank you, Barrick.
Thank you, Andrew. Ian, anything for the good of the order or things that you'd like to highlight in what falls under the definition of qualified individual and the language you worked with?
Yeah, thank you, Barrick. This is Ian Kalmanowitz. I like what Andrew did with definition 1 and having one definition of qualified individual without regard to titles, whether it be Title 1 or Title 3, when we're comparing it to the ADA. And then what I would add is in the other definition that I proposed was to break out and have a separate definition of essential functions, as opposed to having it be sort of this mysterious term of art that lives within the definition of qualified individual, and to be as non-controversial as possible. I basically just took the existing definitions from the existing body of law in appellate case law within the 10th Circuit and the EEOC's regulations. I think this is a great starting point for the definition of essential function. I think there's more room, and as we work through this, I would intend to advocate for more changes to this, but I think this is the starting point, from my perspective, where we ought to be before then looking at additional things to do.
Ian, this is Barrick. For clarification, when you say there's more you would want to do, is that related to the currently proposed language for essential function, or is it other aspects of CADA that stem and follow from this?
Both. In particular, what I didn't want to do was where I'm looking at this ought to be the baseline, because this is, what we've talked about as a committee, incorporating the ADA's existing standards. These are the existing standards from, case law and from the EEOC's regulations, because there is no definition of essential function in the ADA. I've taken the regulatory definitions, put it into a statutory definition now that we go into CADA. I would personally advocate for more in there with respect to things like, for example, if an essential function can't be performed temporarily due to a disability, that essential function can be waived for a temporary period of time. That's something that comes out of the new Pregnant Worker Fairness Act that was just enacted earlier this year into law, where it basically pregnancy is being protected in a way, pregnancy and pregnancy related medical conditions are being protected in a way like disabilities. And one of the things in that law is essentially allows for a temporary waiver of the performance of an essential function due to the temporary nature of a pregnancy. We see that in some scenarios with individuals who may have like a flare up of a disabling condition, or may need more intensive treatment for a brief period of time of a disability that might render them unable to perform an essential function for a brief period. The best example I could give would be a lifting requirement. If a job legitimately has a 50-pound lifting requirement and somebody has had a surgical procedure related to a disability that then limits their ability to lift for a period of time, that shouldn't disqualify that individual from holding the job. They should be able to be accommodated because while you're recovering from surgery, you can't lift 50 pounds because you might pull your stitches, for example, right? That's something that I did not put in there because we haven't discussed it yet as a committee. I didn't want to drop a whole bunch of stuff on people between Christmas and New Year's that we haven't talked about yet. I have other ideas as well, but this is more in sort of achieving that goal that we've talked about as a committee of making Colorado sort of the representative for the rest of the nation in terms of providing the most protections for individuals with disabilities. And so I do think that this is where we should start. And if this was what was enacted into the law and no other changes were made, I'd be content. But I would like to, as we work over the next 12 months, look more at additional things we can do to make this even better. So that's what I mean by that.
Okay. And I'm going to push just to clarify even more. And we find ourselves in a unique situation because we don't have enough folks on this call to have a vote to formally advance a recommendation, which means I'm a little back to the drawing board. We may see if we can get folks. We are statutorily required to submit a report. It actually should have been earlier this month, but because we got stood up a little late, we took a little grace and leeway. I don't feel that I have that to carry it into January, so we will have to submit a report. What this may mean, and I'm going to have to consult with state folks, it may mean that we share the current best thinking with clarity that there has not been a formal vote on this. I will probably work to find time for us, work with Carrie to find time for us over the next couple of weeks to see if we can't get a report in this week, but follow that up with an addenda that has a formal vote in it. And to that end, Ian, I just want to make sure I am hearing you clearly. Is your proposal and recommendation to this group that we go forward as is, or with this big understanding that we don't have it? And I just I'm receiving an email from Alana that she's stranded in a blizzard, so we won't have her. Is my understanding that you would propose to this group we go forward as is, and in the coming multiples of months, look for substantial additions to it? Or do you think there are improvements you would like to propose if we are now looking at adding a couple of weeks to formalizing and taking a vote?
Well, Barrick, this is Ian again. I think if we're not going to have a vote today, what I can do is spend some time over the next week or so adding in additional things as a second proposal that goes beyond what we've talked about as a committee. Like I said, what I didn't want to do was drop a whole bunch of stuff on everybody the week between Christmas and New Year's, and things that we haven't talked about yet. But I can, given that it looks like we're not going to have a quorum today, we're not going to be able to vote today. I am happy to put together an expanded definition here that can be circulated as another alternative for the committee to review, for us to talk about, and then vote on.
I appreciate that. If I can impose on you to do that between now and next Friday, not
Absolutely.
this Friday, the following, we won't look to schedule next week during the first week of January, because if I couldn't get folks this week, I don't want to get them on their first week back. But maybe that would give us time to draft it and circulate, and we can see where the members of the subcommittee are. If they want to vote, we can put both options in front of them, Ian. The current as the baseline, as you suggest, as well as an expanded, if folks are comfortable enough with whatever time for discussion on that. Andrew, as our other lawyer online right now, do you have any thoughts or reactions to what Ian has laid out as possibly this as a baseline, and given our lack of ability to have a vote, potentially an expanded version?
Yeah, thank you, Barrick. This is Andrew again. Yeah, I fully support that. I think it's kind of funny, actually. When I originally pulled up the language Ian proposed, I just did it in the email browser thing, which didn't show the comments. And looking through it, I was kind of hoping it would have gone farther than it did. And I was kind of thinking, I suppose I could stomach it as it is, but I would love to see it go a little further. Then opening it up and seeing that that's where the law sits right now made perfect sense. We're kind of teetering on that knife's edge. But yeah, I mean, Ian, I would fully support pushing that a little bit further and providing some of those additional clarifications, and look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Well, then it sounds like this is, Barrick, that not only may absence make the heart grow fonder, it may make definitions grow stronger. So perhaps, although we're going to have to navigate some things with the state on what we do include in the report, it sounds like we may get stronger definitional recommendations out of this. Cindy, I've been letting lawyers and myself babble a lot, and the babbling is to me, not the lawyers who are speaking much more eloquently. But Cindy, do you have questions about either what Andrew or Ian have laid out, or the current expectation of what we need to now do in terms of what we can report and what we're going to look to do in early January?
I don't have any questions. I think, of course, it would be helpful to continue to improve the definitions, honestly. I mean, there's always some gray area, but the more we can improve it now, then be less work later. And if you put it to a vote, I mean, I've had the benefit of listening to both Ian and Andrew explaining a little bit in more detail what the changes have been and the thinking behind it. But, if it's difficult to put that in comments, maybe just adding a voice memo to the information that you're providing this draft when you put it up to a vote, that might be helpful.
I appreciate that suggestion, Cindy, and I may work with Ian and Andrew on that. We'll also certainly link in, and I'm sorry, I just got another note from Courtney, who is unexpectedly in court for the day. So it's not that people don't love us, it's that blizzards and judges have a way of interfering with the best laid plans. Cindy, I appreciate that suggestion. And just so everybody understands why we're doing this shuffling of scheduling calls rather than just putting things up on a web form or other means, because this is a legislatively created body that's appointed by boards and commissions, we are subject to the public meetings requirements. So all of our votes need to be in a publicly noticed forum such as this. That doesn't stop us from circulating information in a one-way direction. I need to make sure we don't involve multiple members having conversations about it offline, but we can circulate information out, as you suggest, Cindy, in addition to drafts. So with that, unless other folks have thoughts, my proposal to this group is I will work with the state to advance our report in the month of December as required, which will essentially lay out where we are with these definitions, that our intent is to advance a recommendation in January as an addendum to our December report. And otherwise, we'll be laying out in that report the minutes from all of our meetings, along with the agendas, the conversations and themes we've had, and those ideas that I circulated in that framework. But at this point, our December meeting or our December report will not have formal recommendations. It will be a report on our ongoing work and our hope and expectation to advance a recommendation in December. Does anybody have questions or concerns about those next steps for our committee's requirements?
So, Barrick, this is Andrew. Just to let you all know, I've got a trial January 16th through the 18th, so I'm going to be a little out of pocket early in the month through there, but I will do my best to, appear and vote otherwise.
I appreciate that, and we will work with everybody and probably follow up with everybody in addition to our usual doodle or Carrie's outreach, follow up one-on-one with everybody. Otherwise, Ginny, if you're able to stick on, I would love to chat with you for a minute. Everybody else, I appreciate you joining on a short notice, early morning week, during which a lot of folks are sneaking away for the week. Andrew and Ian in particular, thank you for the time you spent over the holidays drafting these and circulating them. Cindy, thank you for hopping on. And of course, Josh and Mark, we always appreciate the Lieutenant Governor's office support. So appreciate you guys jumping on. I'm going to consult with Ginny and with the state, and we'll confirm back out to everybody what time and date we're going to look at for a meeting. It will not be next week. We'll look to work on drafts like Ian, you mentioned, but we'll look to get something firmed up by early next week. So with that, I'm going to end this meeting and the broadcast of it. Ginny, if you're able to stick around, great. If not, I'll reach out to you. But thank you, everybody, and I hope you all are able to have a wonderful New Year's.